Hello, I'm Kristal McDow for Education 3133, Integrating Math and Science in the Elementary Classroom. This is my thematic unit presentation. Now, the whole thing that this unit was designed around was a project where students create cars out of various materials, recycled materials, rubber bands, CDs for wheels, anything that they could think of and do that was feasible, that would work. Once they did that, we had a measured space with a measured space in the classroom where they launch the cars. They see how far they go. They have several chances. They work in groups of 4. They have several chances to go back to the drawing board, make adjustments to their cars, and then relaunch them and see. They're going to have several chances to do that, so they get to see what makes things happen. How can we make this change better? And so they hypothesize throughout this. So we're using math and science. We're measuring. So keeping with that as much as I could. I did get off track with one of my learning stations, but and both of my learning stations were good in what they taught and what they focused on, but they didn't so much stay with the theme. But as we started with the math calendar board, I did a weekly calendar where each day the students come into the classroom and, for instance, on Monday, they would come in and identify the mean, median, and mode of the set of numbers. And now it's just a warm-up activity. It's not designed to be the lesson for that day. It's just to get them started. It's to give them a reason to come in, sit down, and get engaged and get their spirals out, and not just have downtime where they're just dead in their seats and not focusing and getting started. So this was designed to get them started in that and get them in the mode of math. So that's what we've done here. And so each day of the week they'll have a problem that they'll figure out. Now, it's not a big deal. It's not for a whole lot of credit. They just are going to document these in their warm-up spirals. Those are handed in and then just repassed, and then they just get them out of the basket each morning as they come in the classroom. So but let's say for today they finish the problem early, they go ahead and do a bonus question, and there's 2 bonus questions, so they have a chance to earn those 2 extra bonus points. So and the bonus questions change each day, so these are only going to change weekly, but the bonus questions change daily, so that if one student is consistently ahead of schedule, they'll have something to kind of keep them busy until the rest of the class is done and ready to get started with the activity planned for that day. So the next part of this for the learning stations, the science learning station is did get off track from the race car theme and our theme a little bit. We went into space a little bit with this, and I did this because it was a fun subject and it was something that I felt like I could do a learning station around and make sense of. So there are fact cards within the folder. They're just housed here in this little pocket. The instructions are here, and what the students do is in pairs they just pull a fact card from the envelope. They read the fact on it, and whichever fact that whichever Earth, Moon, or Sun they think that the fact is pertaining to, they place it within one of the 3 containers that are here in the station. They each have a picture of that object and a label, Earth, Sun, and Moon. So at the end of this, there's a hint within the folder that says they should have 7 and only 7 facts within each container. If they have more or less than that, they're encouraged then to go back and figure out, read the facts that you've placed in each one, and figure out where you've gone wrong. What fact did you place in the wrong, or what couple of facts did you place in the wrong container? So then it's self-correcting, and it helps the teacher and the student know what we need to work a little more on, what has not been covered possibly enough, or what that student particularly is lacking in. For the math learning station, we did a pie theme, making pie, and there's 2 skills covered here. We went over fractions and multiplication, so we kind of took a basic skill that they should already be doing well, and just basic multiplication, just 1-digit numbers multiplied. And then they come up with the product there, and they place that in either the denominator or the numerator space within a fraction. And there's a blueberry pie, a cherry pie, and a chocolate pie. So within each, there's a cherry pie numerator and a cherry pie denominator, and the same for blueberry and chocolate. After they've gotten those products, they place them in the appropriate place within the fraction, and then they make that pie in the pie plates within the station. with pieces that are here. Now the pieces are cut into the appropriate proportions. If it's 1/7, they're cut into sevenths. So that does help the students to know when they're on track or not. So it's self-correcting in that area. It's also self-correcting in that when you get to the end, if you have come up with a number that's not rational and you know that you can't make it with these small pieces of pie, they have to go back and refigure. So that's something that's helpful and self-correcting for them. It helps them to be guided along as they go. Now, there are going to be students that breeze through the first part of it, the multiplication and the simplifying the fractions. Once they've done that, if there are children who, and all students can do this, the extra practice at the end of the station is now you've multiplied, you've simplified a fraction, and you've created the fraction visually to wrap their eyes around it. For the visual learners, that's helpful. There's extra practice to now make a chocolate cherry pie. Add the pieces of chocolate and cherry pie together. How many pieces of pie do you have now? So once you've reduced those fractions, and let's say you have 2/7 and 3/4, now they're challenged to go ahead and say, let's add those fractions and see what we come up with. How much of a cherry pie do we have now? Or cherry chocolate pie, rather. And it's the same way with cherry and blueberry. We make a mixed berry pie and say at the end, now how much mixed berry pie do we have? So then there's several skills covered here, but it's self-correcting because as they go through it, it has to continue to make sense. So for the lesson plans for this project, the math lesson plan I chose was for volume of a rectangular prism, and that was something that I just felt comfortable with, and that's the main reason I chose it. But it's also letting them know three-dimensional shapes have depth and they hold a volume of something. It's not a flat figure. So that's something to get their head wrapped around too as we go into the virtual field trip, which somewhat had to do with that. For the science lesson plan, what I chose for that was the charting and graphs, which we also integrated technology into. We again used rubber band cars, race them down a strip that's measured, and they hypothesize again through that, and they're allowed to say, I wound it this many times and it went that far, and they chart this information throughout the project. And so there's a group that's charting and graphing and hypothesizing and figuring out the problem and how to make it better, or if you don't want to go as far, or if you want to go farther. So they're having to work through that process while they're charting their results and then plugging those into the system and the technology that's going to ultimately give them data and printed charts, and then they'll present those to the class, so which is challenging their social skills and helping in that area too. So it was just a real fun lesson that tied into the greater unit. Now for the virtual field trip, when I first started planning that, I was having difficulty thinking how to tie it all together, how to get started, and then how to get back home. And I did end up figuring it out, and I think making it fun for the students and the teacher as well. The students start by setting sail on a ship and figuring out a pirate mystery, and it was on a website that offered a game, and so you go through the game and you read a story, and at the end of the story you solve the question. So it's more than a word problem, it's a story problem, and the students have to pay attention throughout the story to gather the information they need to solve the problem. So once they've done that, they dock on an island, and once they're at the island they're all hungry, so then they have to make lunch. So the second part of the field trip is a different website where students go through a field trip of making bread, and there's measurement and there's working together as a team, and so they get to eat the actual bread. They're actually going to do that within the classroom. So there's all kinds of science elements involved there, and the measurement in the math that we've used other places in the unit. So once they've done that, and that's going to be a larger time-consuming part of the process, so it really makes it feel a lot more like a hands-on field trip kind of atmosphere. So that's the real climax of this. And then it's time to return home, and our students receive word that on the ship that they are being asked to help solve a crime back at home. So it's somewhat a detective adventure. And so when they get back home, they're given some information of a crime of some missing ruby earrings. And so once they receive all the facts, they know everything they need to know, they're asked, which is another math problem, to solve the problem, to solve who could it be, who could have done the crime, committed the crime, based on the information they're given. So it's a really fun unit. I think that I've created a unit here that's really hands-on and going to keep the students engaged and wanting more and wanting to know what are we going to do, what are we going to do tomorrow, what's next. And so I think it's going to be a really fun unit, and I also think that it's one that's engaging their minds and helping them to learn in a way that they don't even realize they're receiving the information. So they're learning, and it's I think going to be memorable. The field trip and the learning stations, I think as they go on in school, they'll remember these concepts because of the way they learn them. So I've had fun planning it, and I hope that it's a fun unit to implement in the classroom.